Hey everyone, Joshua Gibson here with episode 73 of the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. Before we get started, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the show's sponsors, BarShield and First Attempt Lifting. BarShield created a maintenance kit designed to prevent rust and restore spin to a barbell's sleeves. My discount code, PWPodcast, gets you 10% off of your entire purchase, and it will also help me to continue producing great podcasts. Head over to barshieldUSA.com, pick up a kit, and get your bars looking and spinning like new. I've also recently partnered with Matt Bergeron of First Attempt Lifting to get you guys 10% off of any diet or digital coaching service. Matt's approach mirrors mine in that it focuses on principles instead of methods. Don't believe me? Go check it out at firstattemptlifting.com and help support the show and support your own goals. Use the code PWPodcast_diet for any nutrition service or PWPodcast_lift for any online programming option. That's it for the long-winded intro. Let's get on to this week's podcast with Zack Telander. Welcome to episode 73 of the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. I'm joined today by the beloved and the renowned people's YouTuber. I think that's what Seb said. Zack Telander. How's it going, Zack?
It's going good, man. 73 episodes?
Yeah, dude.
What was the last one? What was the last one I was on?
15. And then you were on
Wow.
15 and 19. Yeah. It's one of those
wow,
moments.
dude.
It's one of those moments. Thank you.
You're almost at that hundo.
It's like you were saying on the Weightlifting House podcast with Seb. You were talking about like the amount of popularity you've kind of gained, and it's weird almost thinking that you reach this many people, like thousands and thousands and thousands of people with content you put out. I don't know about you, but I feel like the pressure's on when I release content.
Yeah, oh, for sure, dude. It's not easy to just like put some effort into something and then release it out into the wild so everyone can judge you on it. I still get that anxiety a little bit every time I release a video, but the positive feedback, it should outweigh the negative, which is few and far between compared to the positivity.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm kind of curious because I feel this way when I release podcasts. Like sometimes I will really doubt how well it's going to do, and I'm like, I don't think people are going to like it, or maybe I shouldn't put it out, and then suddenly like it's one of the best episodes.
It's that conversation, man. You that's just part of being a creator. That's part of making something. You're constantly having that conversation. It's what pushes you to be better, Yeah. If people just do their job and they're not concerned with the product, then you're not going to get a good product. I agree completely. And the reason I actually wanted to have you on is because you spend so much time, I'll say, helping other people and showing them what they should be doing to improve their weightlifting and become better athletes. That I think it's useful for people to get more of an insight into your training, into your development as an athlete, as a coach, and not just like what you do to help others. So with that being said, maybe since it has been like 40, 50 episodes, maybe you can update us with where you're at, like what's going on in your life, how's training, how's coaching, all that good stuff. So I think last time we talked, if that is over 50 episodes ago, that's over a year ago. There you go. 52 weeks in a year. I mean, I don't know if have you been hitting them every week?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So a little bit over a year ago was the last time I talked to you, and I had pretty much started, or maybe I was like a month into remote coaching. And so now I'm like in a very groovy spot to it where like I'm just hitting things in the right way with my lifters. And, my next goal is with my lifters is to push them into national events. Obviously that's tough to do remote, but I've had guys now for upwards of 24 weeks. Some guys even like 36 weeks, which, if I go by 12-week, macro cycles. So I've gotten better as a coach that way. I've gotten better programming. I've just gotten better in a lot of things. As far as lifting goes for myself, I really decided to make a push to see what I can do. And that's just purely, it's purely intrinsic. It's not based off of my competitive drive, really. It's just, I want to see how far I can go in this sport. So I started putting on some weight, and I weighed in at 111 kilos at my last meet. So I just didn't want to drop weight because the American Open qualifier for 109 and 109 plus was the same. So even though it was 2 kilos, I was like, you know what? I'll just try to qualify for 109 plus. And I ended up qualifying for the American Open as a 109 plus. And I've just kind of like kept on training hard. And now my weight is right around 115. And so I can still be a 109 if I want, but to be honest, it's more about like the clean and jerk for me. I feel confident clean and jerking with heavier body weight, and snatching for me I've always been pretty good at. I feel more confident doing it. I also recently got a coach. I've never had a coach before. So, and the reason why I got a coach, and the coach is Max Ada, who's someone who, I've looked up to since I started coaching weightlifting. But I reached out to him because if I'm going to coach myself and I'm going to coach others, I am going to give myself more attention than the others, right? I am going to be more selfish in my training, and I'm not going to be a good coach. So I basically reached out to Max and I said, I would like to not just be your athlete, because like I'm not like, Pomp or, Anthony Pomponio or any of the other guys that he coaches. I'm not like, trying to make it to a world meet or trying to excel at a national meet. I'm just trying to do the best that I can. And I need someone to hold me accountable.
Sure.
Right. And I've never had that in weightlifting. I've always had people help me. I've always, had training partners. I've always had that stuff, but I've never had like a coach. And so that's a recent endeavor, and I'm actually going to go out and visit Max in a few weeks, and that's going to be before the American Open, and I'm just going to shadow him for a week. And because for me, I've said this one, on my own podcast, I feel like there's really no way for me to learn and get better as a coach than if I train under a coach and I learn a system and I learn how to be coach, I learn how to coach others, and I learn how to, grow and groom athletes. That's kind of the next level for me. And so that's kind of where I've been at lately. So that's it. I mean, as an athlete, as a coach, I'm just trying to get better.
Yeah. And there's a lot there, and I definitely want to dig into it all. Going back to the coaching, I will say that's what a lot of people don't realize is there's this weird transition period when you get into it, especially with people online and when you try and develop athletes, because everyone thinks when I get into coaching, I'm going to have the best athletes and I'm going to do a really great job. And the fact of the matter is, like, most people that come to you aren't very talented or have a lot of work to do to access their talent. Like, very rarely are you going to get that one freak that responds to everything and has great movement and great proprioception and great body awareness. So how did you make it through that transition? Was it kind of just trial and error? And then also, for people looking to get into coaching, what advice would you give them?
Are you talking about as a coach trying to get people to the national level, or
just kind of going, I guess, trying to get through all of those initial struggles? Yeah, for you as a coach, like those coaching struggles, and I guess remote coaching, it's a little bit different. Yeah. But like reflecting back on what was really challenging about it, I guess, like, what would you tell people that want to be in your spot right now?
So, one thing that I'm starting to realize is we've got a lot of volume to make up on. And that's one thing I started talking about in one of my YouTube videos from shoulder to overhead. It's about overhead stability. And I basically commended CrossFit on that. And what they were doing, CrossFit will take a 135-pound barbell or a 60-kilo barbell, and they'll say, I want you to do 10 reps from your shoulder to overhead, put the barbell down, do whatever else. And I want you to do that for 10 minutes. You might get near 100 reps of sub-maximal shoulder to overhead. That's honestly, that's not a bad thing for a new weightlifter. Very sub-maximal lifting for tons and tons of reps. Basically, when you start at 20 years old, you're still a kid. Even though you're older, you haven't been around the sport. Training age is everything. And that's why I've seen myself improve. And so what I've learned is, and this is kind of what Max is telling me, well, actually, my situation is different, but I've had a lot of people, I've been putting them through a technique and capacity phase. So essentially, it's all about barbell control. It's all about sorry, I got something in my nose. So it's all about barbell control, and it's all about time under tension, and just the sets are big, the complexes are big. All of these things are big with lighter weight, and some of my guys have responded like crazy to it. Crazy, right? I'm talking like serious PRs. And they're like, dude, I have never done anything like this before. I'm done with your program. It only took me like an hour and a half to 2 hours, but I am throttled at the end of the day. And we didn't even get past 75%. And I know that sounds crazy. That's kind of like a Russian type of program, but this is even scaled back even further, and then we will progress like 5 reps on back squat very, very slowly over like basically the entire time. So like weeks 1 through 4, we'll go back squat on Monday and Friday and front squat on Wednesday. And then weeks 4 through 8, we might do the same thing. And then weeks 8 through 12, we'll kind of flip-flop that as we want to get more specific, right? So we'll do front squat Monday, front squat Friday, back squat Wednesday. Just flip-flop the two. But I'm pretty much keeping the volume pretty high there. And it just works. It works so well. I have a peaking phase that is really intense, and I might honestly have to scale it back because a lot of the guys respond very poorly to heavier classic lifts. So, and what that says to me is like they need a lot of central nervous system stimulus on warming up session by session. So like some guys I'll say, okay, let's do 3 singles at 90%. They work up, they get to 90%, they miss. They might make one really badly, and then they miss another one. Okay. I would tell them to strip the barbell because maybe they're not using their arms or their upper body. Okay. I would strip the barbell, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to do 2 high pulls, one from the floor, one from below the knees. And then I want you to do a below the knee hang snatch. And then I want you to do a snatch from the floor. Basically, by doing that complex, I'm going to give them one cue, and it's to suspend the bar with their arms. Okay, when you suspend the bar with your arms like that, when you intend to do that, you begin to learn how to flow from one pull into the other, from extension into using your arms to pull underneath the barbell. Okay, then let's build up to a single back to 90%, right? And then they'll get to 90% and they'll be like, oh, this is so easy, or this is much easier, and they'll smoke it because they're using these muscles, they're using these cues from other things, and they're not thinking as much, and it's just kind of, it works, right? I think a more experienced athlete doesn't need that. They don't need that central nervous system stimulus buzz because they've done it millions of times. I mean, you watch these hook grip videos. They do a couple snatches here, they do a couple snatches there. They build up, and then they get their heavy set, and then they're done. Right? Well, sorry to say, but if you're starting weightlifting and you're 20 to 25 years old, you're probably not that good. So you need to do these big sets to activate the proper movement. to just get used to it. And so essentially what I'm doing with my programming these days is basically programming these big sets. And I'm programming these things that help people technically move the right way. And it works tremendously. It's been working like crazy. You know, I allude to like this footage of like the Chinese kids weightlifting, right? And they're constantly just doing reps and then bringing the barbell down and then doing another rep and then bringing the barbell down. It doesn't really seem like they have set work that they're going to do today. It's more like they're practicing a skill, right? I'm almost inclined to say, hey, today we're just going to work on using our arms from the transition from the second to the third pull. We're just going to work on that for 40 minutes. Okay. And then we'll do some. That's what I would say. You know, if you were one of my athletes, I'd be like, today you're 12 weeks out from competition. Why do we have to do something that is so directed towards this percentage? Why do we have to do something so rigid and so structured when your movement isn't good yet? Let's learn this skill, moving from the second to the third pull. It's an incredible skill that literally the Russians are perfect examples of efficiency from moving from the second to the third pull. That the prime mover is moving from the legs into the upper body and the arms. That is a massive issue. And if I took an athlete and I just said, we're going to do this for 40 minutes, you know, and we did that once a week for 4 months, guess what they're going to do when it comes to competition time? They're going to use their upper body to pull the bar into the proper position. You know what I mean? They're not going to be passive when they're pulling themselves under. And that's because I took the time to work on that skill. And so this is one of the realizations I'm having with these people is like, I can't just program percentages and just be like, and just send them percentages. I can't just do that because they miss. And then they're like, why am I missing? Well, coach isn't here because I'm working remote. I guess I suck. It's like if I was in the room, I'd be like, strip the bar, use your arms, and then let's go back up. You know, so now I don't even really try to get the classics that heavy. I know that sounds crazy, but I try to get people to practice the skill. And then they can kind of get stronger with simpler movements like squats, like pulls, all that good stuff. And then when we got a peak 4 weeks out, I just say, well, listen, you have to move heavy weight at some point. But it's very frustrating. You know what I mean? It's like I come to this crossroads where it's like we have to be specific in the way that we attack a weightlifting meet, but at the same time, you're probably not ready for it. And I know that sounds crazy. So that's kind of like, you know, I think this is in the past like month and a half, this is something that I've come to realize. And now that I train with Max, we have been training. I don't know how many weeks out. What? God,
7 weeks out.
7?
Yeah.
Are you going?
No, I'm coaching.
Did you qualify? You're coaching. Okay, so 7 weeks out, right? And typically 7 weeks out, I'd be 80 to 90% like working. That's what I used to think, right? Max and I haven't gone over 75%, and this is 2 weeks into our training. Basically, all we've done is 75% for 3x2 one day. Okay, then the next week 4x2, then we'd actually do 2 snatch sessions, so one on Monday, one on Wednesday. So it'd be like 3x2 on Monday, 4x2 on Friday. And on Friday, I want you to build up to a sub-maximal 2. So you basically go from 75 to maybe 80%. I'm only touching above 80% for like one set. Okay. Then the next week, he'd say, I want all sets to be at the last set. Okay. So maybe I'm at 80% or maybe we'll build up again. But it's for us, my goal, it's not about burying yourself with classics. It's about control and it's about strength. Right? Because I'm not really learning that much. I'm not learning how to snatch or how to clean and jerk. So for me, it's about like I'm doing 5s pretty much until the meet. I know that sounds crazy, right? And the squats have to move fast. So they're very light. They're like 75 to 80% as well. And I'm just accruing more and more volume per week, more and more volume per week. And I feel fresher than ever going into heavier days. I just did this competition last weekend, and it was a weird CrossFit competition, and I did it with 2 other guys. There was a max front squat, max deadlift, and a max jerk. Actually, the max deadlift was after the jerk, thank God. But I hadn't touched above 80% in all 3 of those lifts, and I PR'd all 3 of them, which is just bonkers to me. It blew my mind. And you know what? This is something that's crazy is like, if you are a coach and you don't train, you would never have that sort of realization. And that's something that I had. And I thought, and I immediately texted Max. I was like, listen, man, I'm almost convinced like we don't need to go really heavy until the last few weeks of training. I know what heavy weight feels like. I know what I want to snatch, and it's not anything heavier than, or snatch and clean jerk, and it's not anything too much heavier than what I've done before. So I know I can do it. So let's stay away from it and keep building strength. And he's like, hell yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I want. I know that's a lot, and I kind of went on one right there, but for real, that's been one of the major changes in my coaching and as an athlete.
And what's funny is every time I record a podcast, I'm like, this needs to be the best one I've ever recorded. Like, this needs to be literally the best thing I've ever done, because I want to keep the content quality high. And that like whole breakdown you just gave was golden, beautiful. I think people are going to love that because I loved it. And there are a lot of things that I agree with. And I see a lot of the things I do in what you're saying. So basically, I told someone today, this was at the gym like 3 hours ago, people are they're aggressive enough with their legs. They know how to be aggressive with their legs. They have no idea what it means to be aggressive with your arms. That's like the number one thing that I see. And that's exactly what I heard from you. Is like, people know how to push with their hips and push with their legs and build a lot of height and build a lot of speed. But once that's over, they're done. They just float around. They flop to the floor. The bar crashes. It just takes on a mind of its own. And I've been incorporating more drills like tall cleans and no contact muscle snatches and all these things that basically teach you like, this is how you need to pull when you're snatching, because it's not over once the bar leaves your hips. So
exactly.
That's great, man. That was excellent. I was like captivated, and I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to interrupt. Because it's just so good.
I kind of felt bad. I thought like maybe I should stop ranting, but I had quite a bit to say.
It was good, and I have a couple of questions then, like breaking this down a little bit further. Okay. Before we get into the coaching and the programming, why Max? Right, there are a lot of great coaches. There's Sean Waxman, Travis Mash, et cetera. Why Max Ada?
It's easy for me, man. His story, like, it always captivated me. It took me, and so I reached out to him for a number of different reasons, but when I did reach out to him and I said, hey, can I come visit you? I basically was like, I want to come visit you. I want to learn from you. He's like, yeah, man, let's do it. And I'm like, I'll sweep the floors. I'll do what you want, man. And then I mentioned, I was like, maybe I could do something where like what you did with Ivan Abajev. And he started laughing. He's like, he sent back like, ha ha ha, like, that's ridiculous, dude. Just come hang out, like, cause Max is just much more chill than that. But I felt like that experience that he had with Ivan Abajev, and for some context for the listeners, basically Max lived with a bunch of other weightlifters and Ivan Abajev, who was the most famous coach in weightlifting of all time, or at least one of them. And there's always this Russian coach who I can't think of. Maybe you would know his name. He was the one who had the famous white moment quote.
Is it Yuri something? I mean, I could be.
Vlasov. Yeah. Vlasov, right? Yeah. Vlasov. I'd say he's probably up there as well. And then, certain Chinese coaches, but the fact that he was willing to just like not do anything but train with this man who was going to kill him. It's essentially like putting yourself through. You're saying, I want to get into the military. Well, then let's go do buds training, right? It's like anyone who makes it out of that has seen some shit, and they know they're just in control of themselves, and they're in control of other things, at least in my mind. And you know, there's other things as well. I think Max is just a chill dude, you know, and I know that's probably like some people don't want that in a coach or whatever, but Max is incredibly intelligent. And I believe that if you are relaxed a majority of the time, that doesn't mean that you're just like, you don't care about anything. And I think that's what people can misconstrue about when people are relaxed. Like some of the most relaxed people were the Coen brothers. I don't know if you know film at all. You know, the Coen brothers are my favorite directors, and they're so chill, man, but they're crazy particular about the way they do things. And I get that vibe from Max. So I've always respected him, you know, one, because he's the guy he is, and two, because, you know, living with Ivan Abajev. And and a couple of my friends had been training under him for the past year. And, you know, I was thinking, I thought of other coaches as well. But then I reached out to Max. He talked, I mean, we had a conversation. We actually called each other. I called him like that day. We talked about certain things, and it just, he blew my mind with some of the things he was saying. And I swear to you, Josh, there hasn't been much that has blown my mind in this field in a long time. Like there hasn't been someone that spoke to me about weightlifting where I've been like, wow, that really changed it up for me. You know, and I can tell you what specifically he said. He was like, you know, a lot of times people think that the way that you're built basically means, okay, we just need to slam you with squats. And he said, but it really is about your low back strength. It's not about your quad strength. Your quads they're not, the strength of your quads is not important if you can't use them, and you won't be able to use them if you can't, you know, support yourself with your low back. And what we need to do is, if we want to build your quads, we need to not use your low back. And if we want to build the strength in your low back, we need to have it be very low rep as opposed to high volume. You know, most coaches would just be like, okay, 10s on the back squat. And he said, well, that's not going to work for you because you're not a good squatter. So you're not going to efficiently use your quads. And I know that might sound, the way that I just said it might sound like, oh, that's, you know, very something. But to me, when I heard that on the phone, I was like, God damn it. Yes, dude. You know, I've been told my whole life, just keep squatting, just keep squatting, just keep squatting. He said, no, like he was like, no, you have to attack it in a different way than others. And this is something, you know, that like, I think there's a lot of that missing in just the way that certain things are portrayed or said in weightlifting. And that's exactly my motto when I'm making these videos. It's like, what do people want to accomplish and what hasn't been said about it? I'm not creating new content. I'm just trying to explain it in a way that hasn't been heard before and that should be heard. Like these lifts have been performed for how long now? You know, like there's not much changing. Okay. But as they gain popularity, we have the ability to speak on them in a different way than has ever been spoken on them before. And so something that Max did to me that day when I talked to him on the phone was like that. He made me feel that exact thing. And, you know, if I can get people viewing my videos to feel that exact same thing, then damn, I'm doing my job, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why I chose Max. I mean, honestly, like, and I'm so stoked about it.
Yeah, so what you were just saying, that's kind of, I feel that very rarely. So when you were explaining like the high rep sets, as weird as this sounds, like that captivated me because it was something that I haven't heard phrased in a certain way that made so much sense. I shout out to Danny Camargo. I had him on the podcast, and the way he explained, like the way he talks to his athletes and gets them fired up, I had that same feeling. And the way that like Max talks about programming, like I have that same feeling. It's a very rare kind of sensation when you hear something new in weightlifting that makes so much sense, and you're like, why isn't everyone doing this? Like this is the way to gold.
And I'm telling you this past week, so I do 2 a days on Monday and Wednesday. Okay. And I'm not kidding you. If you looked at the program, you'd be like, this looks so dumb. I go in the morning on Monday and I'll do 2 sets of 2 at 75%. Okay. And then I will do 4 sets of 5 on the back squat at 75%. And then, week by week, he basically says add on 5 kilos. So it's 75. It's marked as 75% and add 5 kilos. That's my workout number 1. That's it. It takes 45 minutes. No, I do a warm up, so it takes an hour. And then I leave. Then I come back and I have 3 more sets at 75% again. Okay. And then I have pulls. Right. That is a workout that I could have accomplished at one time. And we can talk more about why 2 a days matter and stuff like that. But basically his goal is like, I want you to accrue quality reps, especially in the squats. And I don't want you to get smashed with heavy weight and smashed with high volume sets that don't translate to muscle growth and control. And he's like, I basically want you to build that over the course of a meso, micro, whatever, and prepare you for your meet. Right? The meet doesn't start today, And so it's been funny, and like I said, I've been doing so well with this style of programming. It's like, why doesn't everyone do this? And the truth of the matter is that not many people are at the skill level I'm at. And I'm not saying that I'm like some sort of god of weightlifting, but some people have different needs. But I can say that if they have technical needs, from my own perspective, and this isn't from Max, if people have technical needs, you need to practice those technical needs. Right? And that's something that's really strange to some people. I remember when I was playing lacrosse, okay? And I sucked at using my left hand. And when I was 13 years old, I went to this camp because my sister went to Dartmouth University. Or is it Dartmouth College? Yeah, it's Dartmouth College, I think. Anyways, I went to the lacrosse camp there. And I went there and I was 13 years old. I was supposed to play with the middle schoolers, but I was doing really well. So they wanted to see how I did with the high schoolers. They put me in a scrimmage against 15 to 18-year-olds. Right? That's crazy for a 13-year-old to do. Okay. I was a bigger kid, but I was still petrified. And I remember these kids were using their left hand and their right hand. And I was like, I cannot do that. I can't. I can barely use my left hand, but that's it. And I remember going to tryouts for varsity my freshman year. And I remember in the tryout, the coach said, we are going to be on the wall for 20 minutes, and I'm going to count how many reps you can get with your left hand. We're just going to do that. And I remember I was so sore in my left arm from holding it up for 20 minutes. I was so sore I couldn't function the next week. Okay. But I promise you, the next week after that, I felt so confident throwing left-handed passes. He didn't say, okay, well, we need to periodize the amount of left-handed passes we make, and then we need to progressively overload. He just said, no, you suck at this. We smash this. Okay? This is what you need to do. This is what I love to do with people as a coach. Hey, you're sucking at pulling the bar. You're shitty at pulling after extension. So you know what we're going to do all day today for 40 to 50 to an hour, to as long as you get it, we're going to do exactly that. We're going to high pull. We're going to snatch to plates. We're going to do these complexes. We're going to do snatches from blocks. And we're going to do this until it burns, just like it did when I was playing lacrosse. And next time you want to snatch 100%, and you won't even be thinking about it. It's just going to be in you. And that's an approach to coaching beginners that needs to happen. Right? That absolutely needs to happen as a coach. You can't be thinking about how you're going to program something. You need to be thinking about how you're going to get them to move better. You can program squats for beginners all you want. That's fine. We don't squat, though, in this sport. Right? At the end of the day, we snatch and we clean and jerk. Okay. But what Max is doing with me is different than that. You know, he's basically saying, like, we need to hold off on heavy things, on things that stress you out in certain places, and we need to build strength in a very narrow-minded way. And so we can optimize. And who knows what I'll get at the American Open. You know, I may or may not qualify for nationals. I may or may not PR. I could fucking bomb for all that matters. But I feel strong, and I can't wait to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I will say, kind of touching on that whole beginner thing, like, as you're explaining that, like, that's my approach to programming and training beginners is, like, we have a basic idea of what we want to do. We have a template. We're going to snatch. We're going to clean and jerk. We're going to do a lot of reps. We're going to do a lot of warm-ups. We're going to do a lot of sets. And then kind of along with what Sean Waxman says, it's like, what are we going to hit today? Well, it really depends on how quickly you move and then what the quality looks like. So as soon as the bar starts slowing down and as soon as the form starts to deteriorate, we're done.
Did you have Waxman on here?
It was beautiful. It was great.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's okay. And I was just curious.
Along with that, the same thing with the squats, man. What I see a squat, what I think the squat does. Okay, it gets someone stronger. Yeah. Do you need to be really strong as a beginner? Not really, but it does fix technical flaws, right? So, for example, someone I know, they come up to onto their toes in the catch. Right? Catch and the pull. So when we do squats, we pause, we hold that for 5 seconds, and then we just do more reps with the feet flat. I think a lot of people take the squat, take the deadlift, take the pulls, and they just want to get as heavy of a weight as possible on those lifts. When as a beginner, it's just about getting quality reps and getting as many as possible. So I use pulls to train technique because it's just training the movement without the complexity of going under it. And then kind of going along with that, the difference for you. So I'm curious, you talked about like high rep sets. When you talk about complexes, I had this discussion with Chris LaRue. He's a weightlifter. I had this discussion with Seb. I had this discussion with a lot of people. They don't like complexes. Well, Seb does, but Chris said he doesn't like complexes. He said they're not specific enough. And then I tried to make the argument like, okay, well, a snatch pull plus a snatch is a complex. And we're doing a lot of things there. We're working technique. We're accumulating more volume, and it kind of works as a conditioning tool. So I'd like to get your take on complexes, how you use them, and what a typical complex would look like for, say, one of your lifters.
Well, what you would need to ask Chris is specific enough for what? You know, if he says competition, it says, okay, well, when is the competition?
Yeah.
And then when he says it's 12 weeks from now, and I say, okay, that doesn't matter. You know, or if he says, oh, they're not going to compete anytime soon, well, then why are we caring about specific?
Yeah.
We have a goal that's abstract, and that is I want a good-looking snatch, a good-looking clean and jerk. And these complexes are simply tools that I use to make that look better. I don't know. I'm not so sure about the specificity argument, because I think someone could do a clean front squat jerk damn near up to the competition day. Clean front squat jerk, that's not specific to the movement, but it will help you because it's somewhat of a conditioning tool, like you said. Snatch, pull plus snatch. I actually watched a video of Victor Getz doing it 3 days before competition. Snatch, pull plus snatch. I watched Lasha do triples of muscle snatches near competition. That's not specific. I watched these things live, dude. There's an Egyptian super heavy. I watched him push press 170 for triples after his workout. That's not specific. You know, it really, you know, it's hard to make that argument specificity because there's no specific person. And at the end of the day, like, how good is that specific person at the snatch and the clean and jerk? When I said that, you know, I got guys. Here's specificity. 100% for one rep.
Yeah.
That's a specific I get. And when I start to get people near specificity, one of two things happens. They either succeed or fail. If they fail, that means they're not experienced enough. Their training age isn't high enough. They haven't gotten it, or they're not ready. Because I've got a guy who's not very experienced who loves heavy weight because he's technically sound and he's stronger than shit. And so when we go heavy, this kid PRs. He can work in the 90 to 100% range. He really can. Assuming, I would say 12 weeks from now, and let's say we finish another cycle, it's probably going to be harder for him to work in the 90 to 100 range, obviously. But I've had other people who would be like, okay, we did 4 weeks of volume. We did high reps, high complexes. Let's go from 80 to 90%. Let's maybe push 95%. And then those people, they'll be like, oh man, I'm missing rep after rep. All these things, they just start to fall apart. That's experience. That's training age. That's experience. That's it. It's that simple. That's for me as an athlete. Like that's what's been the biggest difference. I can walk up to 120 kilos and hit it every single time. That's purely because I can hit it for 5 doubles, 10, whatever it is. I know that I can hit it. I know that I can do these things. And whether it's because I'm stronger now or not, it's just because I've done it so many goddamn times. And it's like I can only do it so many times in a mesocycle. So if I do 5 mesocycles, or however many times 12 fits into 52, fits in 4. Okay. So if I do it 20 times over a mesocycle and I do 4 mesocycles, that's 80 reps at 120. And if I do that for 4 years, well, now I'm doing 340 reps at 120. 120 is now my bitch because I've been doing it for 4. You know what I mean? That's training age. That's just experience. I've got guys I've been working with them. They've been snatching and clean and jerking for 20 weeks and they want to go and PR. It's like, well, how well do you move? How well do you do certain things? So it's kind of specificity is an argument that can only be made for one singular person, and it depends on how they perform.
Yeah, I agree completely. And kind of going along with that, I did want to touch on the whole frequency part of your training. I think that'd be really interesting to discuss, not only for why it works for you, but who else it would work for. So you talked about your training a little bit and how you're doing double days. So why do you do that? And then if someone was looking to incorporate it into their training, what should they consider beforehand?
So there's 2 reasons to this. The first one is adaptation. So and adaptation can kind of feed into the next one. Kelly Starrett, someone who I actually kind of disagree with a lot of his approach to training, and for the athlete, I disagree with utilizing his style. But I think for the average individual who just wants to be a healthy person, I think more power to you. But one thing that he said on a Barbell Shrugged.
Yeah.
One thing he said on that podcast really struck home with me. He's like, we have an issue with CrossFitters where they sit at a desk, they don't do anything all day, and then they come in, work really hard for an hour, and then they relax. So they have a spike of working and being a human and movement for 1 hour out of 24 hours, right? What if we were able to do 15 minutes earlier in the day, 15 minutes in the middle of the day, and 15 minutes at the end of the day? You have to think about what your body needs to do to get to perform at a certain level in a session. Okay. So if I have programmed for you, Josh, today we're going to do 3 sets of 2 at 80%. That's a doable day for you. Okay. You're probably going to go 50% for 3 or 4, whatever, just kind of snatching it. Then you'll do 60% for a double, 65% for a double, 70 for a double, 75 for a double, and then you do your first working set. So what if I said, instead of doing 3 doubles at 80%, what if we did 2 in the morning and 2 at night, or 2 in the morning and 1 at night, or 1 in the morning and 2 at night? We would have to do all of those warm-up sets and then do that first one. And then we would go home, relax. We'd come back, we'd do all of those warm-up sets, and we'd do the next one. Those warm-up sets, those technical reps, that's the volume that beginners need. That's the adaptation that people are getting that they don't realize that they're getting. A double at 70%, 3,000 times is 3,000 more reps, right? So that's the level of, so adaptation, specific adaptation to intended, what's the last?
Imposed demands.
Impose demands.
Yeah.
God, that's like the said, it's whatever. It's just specificity. It's like a longer way of saying specificity. Sorry, I didn't know my vocab there. I even dropped that in my my YouTube video. But basically, it's like the more chances we have to adapt, the more chances we have to do this specific task, the more we'll be able to make those connections, literal connections, like in our brains to the skill. Right? People go to work for 9 hours a day and they get really good at making Excel sheets and doing these things. Why? Because they do it for 9 hours a day. They don't just come in for 1 hour, leave, forget about it, do a bunch of other shit. Come in for 1 hour, leave, do another shit. They do it for 9 hours. Right? If people think that going to train is a chore that kills you, we are going to kill you this session. Right? There's going to be hard sessions, but if you go in and be like, I need to kill myself, and then you're like, well, how do I get more in this mesocycle? How do I get more technique work? Oh, I'll just add in another session where I'll kill myself again. Well, that's not a smart approach. That doesn't make sense at all. Right? You now have two sessions in a day where you used to have one. How hard is it to do, hey, you know what? Instead of 3 doubles at 80%, let's do 4 doubles at 80%, but instead this time, let's do 2 in the morning and 2 at night. We're only adding in 1 more working set for that day. But if you multiply that by 4, by 12, you now have you have much more increased work over the course of a mesocycle. So for me, that is the key. That is everything. It's more volume accrued over the course of a mesocycle wins. Okay, but having said that, people think more. Again, it's by the individual. So that's why frequency matters. Another reason why frequency matters, and this is something that's I hope the listeners pay attention to, especially if they're going to compete. Frequency matters because you need to be able to prepare yourself and arouse your central nervous system faster and more efficiently, and you need to do that because when you snatch at a national meet, you might be resting for 12 minutes. This is the reason, like, the Bulgarians just did not give a shit because they could literally, if they absolutely had to, they could load 150 kilos on the bar without warming up and at least attempt to snatch it. Nothing could break them. And if you and this is one of the craziest things craziest phenomena that's happened to me is, like, okay, in prep, I like to do, I'll work up to a single at 90% in the morning, and then I'll work up to a single at 90% at night. It's like one of my favorite workouts. Work up to a snatch single at 90% and maybe do a couple squats, maybe do some accessories, and get the fuck out of the gym, right? Just leave. And then go hang out, do whatever, come back and do it again. And it's almost a guarantee that my second session is going to go better than my first. It's almost a guarantee. The warm-up is better. The movement is crisper. Everything is like, I know what's going to happen. I know how I'm going to perform, and I always end up performing better. This makes sense to me. If you want to get good at a skill, just do it more, but you can't just slam more volume into a singular session. Doesn't make sense. So yeah, those are one of the many reasons why it helps.
And I guess
do more sessions.
I have a lot to say on that, and so I kind of have to cut you off. I'm done. I don't want to talk more. I want you to talk, please. So there's been a lot of research, and sometimes people they feel conflicted about this. So, like, I guess the optimal window for kind of optimizing the adaptation to training is like 45-minute sessions. And this has kind of been shown from a couple guys, but for most people that's unrealistic. You can't have a 45-minute session 5 times a week and expect to make real progress. And I think if you're someone with the luxury, so Zach, you have the luxury of training multiple times a day because you put yourself in that position, take advantage of it. And even if that means like breaking up strength work and skill work, squatting in the morning, pulling in the morning, coming back and doing the lifts, you'll benefit. I mean, if you did your accessory work in the morning, just like any way you can break up that work and get a little more recovery, you'd see a huge benefit. The next thing
I can. Oh yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
Just one more thing is Mike Israetel has a book, Scientific Principles of Strength Training, I think, and he talks about like the stimulus recovery adaptation curve of different qualities, right? So if we look at skill, muscle growth, strength development, they have these certain curves where they kind of peak and you make that adaptation, and then they decline and you get worse. Well, the skill SRA curve, as it's called, is the shortest curve, right? You're exposed to a stimulus and it peaks and then it tapers off. And with skills, that curve happens a lot quicker and it's a lot shorter in that sense. So the more exposure you can get to it, I mean, obviously the higher the peak of that curve, the less kind of loss of skill. That's why people don't usually snatch twice a week or once a week. So again, breaking it up and getting those exposures, as Zach, as you said, over time, all of those warm-ups matter, all of the reps with the bar matters. Every single thing you do that's a snatch matters. So if you can get 20 exposures during the week instead of just 2, you're going to be a better weightlifter. It's just kind of the way it works.
Absolutely. Yeah. So first off, you explained with science what I explained with bro science. You know what I mean? It's like if I didn't train, if I wasn't so consumed with maximizing my ability as an athlete, I would not be able to maximize my ability as a coach.
Yeah.
And that's interesting is like I just experimented with myself. I said if I'm going to do working sets, then I'm going to do a certain amount of working sets. I'm going to overload them, whatever. I'm just going to periodize. How can I do it twice a day? And I just started doing it and I saw results. And it's interesting because the Mike Israetel thing explained that exact phenomena and I had no idea about it. You know, but one thing, if you're listening out there, if you have a way of doing it, because like, honestly, if you have a half hour before, like if you're able to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, maybe you know, and this is another thing too, probably shouldn't interrupt sleep. Okay. But if you're able to get enough sleep and wake up at 5 in the morning and literally snatch up to 1 double at 80% and then walk out the door and then come back in later that night and do 4 doubles at 80%, you have now made yourself vastly better of a weightlifter if you can repeat that over 4 weeks to 12 weeks, right? And that's something that is so incredibly simple to do. And it's simple meaning like literally 80% everyone should be able to hit every day, right? That, and I'm not saying that you should do it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but like working up 80% double, boom, leave, or 80% single, boom, leave. Depending on where you're at, if you want to peak, you could do the same thing with 90. But like you said, that exposure to another time where you're learning a skill, where you're becoming more confident in the skill, that's what makes you good. And something that I'm learning now, like with Max, he literally said, he's like, we are only snatching so that the skill doesn't decay. We're not snatching for stimulus. This is not happening. I don't want to get a stimulus from this thing. I just want you to have the skill. I'm like, damn, dude, that blew my mind.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I do have a question.
I'm a little bit more, yeah.
As far as the peaking goes, so people that aren't training twice a day, so maybe someone you program for. I've been wrestling with this idea because I have nearly everyone that I program for do the lifts 3 times a week. I think that's kind of like 2 heavy sessions. One's more volume, one's more intensity, one's kind of like technique work, skill work, kind of depends. And then when you transition to a peak, say the 4 weeks leading up to a meet, how many times do you program snatch, clean, and jerk? And what does the progression look like? Because I've been playing around with like every time they're in the gym, snatch, clean, and jerk. If it's a muscle snatch, if it's a muscle clean, if it's a no foot, no hook, whatever, as long as you're performing the movements at 80% for a single, that's better than not doing it at all. So what's your approach to that? And I know you talked about changing it. What does that look like?
Man, peaking for me is I beg of my athletes to get in the gym twice a day, at least twice a week. I beg them, and like I really ask them. I'm like, how badly do you want to do well? And I'm not saying that it has to be done, but it's like I don't want them to do 3 singles at 95% in a day. Like I just don't want them to do that. But if I can do 1 single in the morning and 1 single at night, that's better than just working up to 95%. You know, what I play with is exactly what you said. We're pretty much going to snatch and clean and jerk and squat and pull every day. Obviously, volume is going to be down. Intensity is going to be high, but volume is going to be lower than it ever has been before. I'm talking working up to an RPE 8.5, RPE 9 back squat, and you're done. You know, I've seen, like I'll say like literally that means 10 reps. You know, for me, if someone said work up to like a 190 back squat, okay, I would do the barbell for a couple reps, 70 for 1 or 2 reps, 120 for 1 or 2 reps, 150, 170, 190. And I would just do singles from there on, right? That's only 10 to 12 reps. So things like that during peaking is what like I really want to do. But I also try to tell the guys like, hey, listen, the money is in the bank here, right? Like there's not that, I mean, peaking just means we're trying to utilize what we've already built. Okay. So I've already built a triple you just did a triple at 90% last week. Cause I'll have them do a max triple or a max double 5 weeks out, maybe even earlier than that. And I'll say like, listen, you know what you're capable of. We just have to capitalize on it. You know, because peaking starts, 4 weeks out. You build 4 weeks. That's pretty much standard. The money's in the bank at that point. So what I try to do is be like, let's get into the mindset of a weightlifter now. Let's try to be a little bit more professional about these things. Let's try to think and visualize the movement. Let's try to like a lot of it is visualization. A lot of it is that, but I'd have to pull up my program, like what I've programmed for other guys as far as specific percentages. But again, that concept of the money being in the bank, right? Hayes in the barn, all these different cliches that you could throw in. All of your work over the past 8 weeks, that's in there. We have to tap into it the right way. And so there's a couple different ways to do this, but I do slam guys pretty hard in peaking phases. I really do. And I tell them to do higher volume sets when they're warming up, just so they don't forget those skills. So like we said, high pulls, low hang stuff, whatever you want to do, doubles, triples, just get warm, get loose. Then I want you to get in your mindset where like today I'm competing again, and I'm competing again. And then, the last week will literally taper off entirely. And then we just basically have to get you as aroused as possible, like literally as stimulated as possible to perform on that day that we called for. It's actually pretty simple when you think about it, right? It's more about capitalizing than it is about adapting. It's about optimizing, not adapting in that sense. Yeah. Hopefully that explains kind of my theory around it. But again, the reason why 2 times, again, it's like it's the profession, it's the not really giving a shit. It's like I have 90%, boom, I warm up, I'm out. It's like I know I've done it so many times. It's that I want to say professional, but it's business-like approach to the weights. That's the feeling of peaking. This is business-like, right? And it might hurt, it might suck, but it's like this is what I do. I'm a professional. I come in and I get the work done. Yeah, basically.
There's a couple things, and I want to shout out someone that I had on the show, and I know her podcast won't get a lot of love because she doesn't have a big name, and this podcast will blow up. I know it because Zach, you're on it. But Debbie Millett from Praxis Weightlifting. She talked about this strategy she uses with her weightlifters when they're getting ready for a meet. So it's almost the opposite of visualization. It's like she goes up to someone and she says, hey, Your family didn't show up to the meet. You missed your first 2 attempts. Nothing is going right. You're about to have the worst meet of your life. Everything is terrible. You're struggling. You're stressed. Now go make this 90% single and fucking make it beautiful. Because if you don't, you're going home a loser, right? So she just creates this fucking intense, dark environment for her lifters and says, now you need to execute. And I think that's something I've never heard of and I've never tried, but it sounds like it fucking worked like a charm.
I like that. I like that a lot. I like any of that stuff, man, really. I just like having that communication with your lifters.
Yeah.
Like, I love it. I feed off of it. Like, I get them fired up every day, like, and especially in peaking phases.
Well, you sound like
they just don't.
You just sound like a guy that when you get excited, you can tell, right? And I feel the same way. Like, when I see someone and their technique looks the best it ever has, and the bar is in the right spot, and you hear that big pop off the hips, and the feet land like solidly, you're like, you get excited. You start chirping at the athlete and getting them ready, because this is what it's all about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that sort of thing. I think that has to happen a lot of times when people haven't been peaked before. Again, it's whatever the athlete's used to. You have to just know, obviously, specifically what the athlete responds to and all that. But I've had guys, that like I'm telling you, they struggle with high percentages because they visualize themselves failing.
Yeah.
It's like, you have no clue what you're capable of. You just don't. I know that you're capable of this, and this. You just can't feel it. You can't see it. You can't understand it. So I have to be able to tap into them kind of ignoring it or whatever it is that works for them.
Yeah. I do have one quick question. I think you kind of touched on it, and I think a lot of people miss this because they're in a position where they think more is worse, quicker is better. And you talk about it during a peaking phase. Bang out your squats. Don't spend a lot of time there. All we need is a heavy single to keep the legs fresh. But a lot of people rush their warm-ups with the snatch and the clean and jerk, and they miss a lot, and they get better as the session goes on. And I think that's something a lot of people need to reconsider is like, how do I warm up my snatch? Do I take doubles all the way up? Do I take triples all the way up? Do I take a weight multiple times? So if you have someone that comes into the gym, they're an all right lifter, and they start warming up with the bar, how do you tell them to get to their top weight?
Well, Ilya is not missing a warm-up ever. That should say enough about that. A newer lifter, they might miss a few warm-ups, especially if we want them to hit 95%, right? So for me, it's like it's the experience level. I hate to just be like, oh, well, it depends, because that's just annoying of an answer. But like really, if you're good enough, you'll know, when I like every meet for me from now on, I'm probably going to open up at 130 or higher. Okay. That means I'm probably going to end up doing doubles up into 100, maybe a double at 110. And then I'll do 120, 126, and then we'll see from there. I know that I'll never miss any of those. That's just what I know because I've been training it. And so for me, it's like, what do I do to get to that point where I know? Well, it's like, it depends on what I've been working on. Sometimes I like to do power. I'll do a power and then I'll do a full. And the reason I'll do a power and a full is because the power makes sure that you're focused on bar height. And sometimes when you get into this groove of dropping under so hard, you might not get sufficient bar height or a bar height that that you can get. Right, so I'd like to add in a power. I'll do power plus full all the way up to like 100 or 110. Right, and that's something that just works for me. But for another person, I could be like, we're gonna do a power, and then we're gonna do a full, and then we'll do a hang, and then that might not be specific enough for that competition, or we'll do it just depends on what that person needs and what they need to do to visualize. Like, I'm very much about like, you can cue someone, but you can also drill someone into like doing the cue that you want. I think warming up is all about, is a lot of it. If I'm going to do specific stuff like competition style warm-ups, it might not be the best thing to do. Like I said, hangs and stuff, but it depends how you get warmed up. I've seen elites do stuff like that. Like, I think I saw not Muradi, but the other Iranian guy who's pretty famous. Rostami. I saw him in the warm-up room doing some crazy stuff. Like, I think he was doing muscle snatches and then muscle cleans, like when he was warming up. It's just whatever you do to get you firing, right? So cueing might help that. I know a couple guys that I have, they kick the bar out on the first pull when it becomes more competitive, and that's because they're thinking, okay, this is heavy weight. I need to pull it up really hard. So when they pull it up really hard, that means they bring their hips down and forward really hard. And then when they pull up really hard, they throw their shoulders back really hard. And that just kicks the bar out and goes around their knees. And they have this really ugly pull. Well, I just tell them, slow off the floor. In that specific context, I'll tell them slow and control off the floor. If you go as hard as you can at extension, you'll get any weight you want. You'll clean anything you want today. But for someone else who struggles in the squat, maybe I'll say, you know what? Maybe you need to break the bar off the floor a little bit harder. Maybe this one caught you off guard a little bit in the second pull. Maybe you didn't get enough bar height. Maybe you weren't able to, a lot of the changing speeds in the snatch and the clean and jerk is like, instead of thinking of going from 0 to 60, you need to think about changing gears from second to third gear, right? Instead of trying to go too slow in the first pull, it's a balance, right? If you go too slow in the first pull and you try to go really fast in the second pull, it's going to be a lot harder than if you kind of go medium speed and then really fast. Or if you go fast to faster, right? That's something that can help people. Those are two different occasions. I've told someone to slow down off the floor. I've told someone to go faster off the floor. It's all dependent on the lifter's ability and what they do to warm up. And that's specifically for when they want to compete and when they want the best out of that session or meet, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's important for a lot of people to hear, though, because I notice with a lot of newer athletes, people that haven't been coaches or haven't coached an athlete, is they kind of hear cues and then they just use those kind of at will. And you just hear them they say whatever, get tall or heels or, knees back, whatever it is. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but it is so individual for the person that if I yell heels, it's because they stay on their toes so much that they jump forward, right? Or something like that. So right. It's super individual, and I think it's important to contextualize it. I do have a question, and this is more of an opinion thing. I don't know if you've ever used them, but I've been programming in waves more now as the heavy day to kind of get a feel for. So I'm thinking in the back room, a lot of time between snatch attempts, let's come down, let's work back up. So I've recently tried it. I don't know if it's going to work, but I feel like a lot of people have trouble with the timing of the lift because Seb and I talked about this on his last podcast, but they start pulling back a little earlier with the heavy weight. They don't get the bar as high. So what's your opinion on waves? Have you ever used them? And then do you think they'd be useful to program?
Okay, so I just pulled up my program here. Okay, because this is great. I love that you brought that up. It fires me right up. So Colin gets back from the American Open Series 3 in Las Vegas, and he's basically like, dude, I did my opener snatch, or it was my opener clean and jerk, and I rested 12 minutes in between attempts. And so I was like, you know what? If you want to compete, you have to grind so hard to be prepared for that. If you think about a max out with your homies in the gym, it might take a half hour to max out your snatch. Maybe. But if you're at a competition, you hit one lift and you rest 12 minutes, you are so fucked because you have no idea how to do that. So actually what I programmed for one of my guys, and he PR'd his snatch huge, but he went for some big stuff in the clean and jerk because he wanted to qualify for provincials. He's in Canada. He was really silly about this. He was like, I probably was the strongest I've ever been. I just went and took a 10-kilo jump. and he missed. But it was silly, dude. But anyways, he PR'd his snatch by 10 kilos, and he went 3 for 3. And it's basically because I made him numb to competing. The week before I said, build to your opening weight, hit it, rest 3 minutes, take a rep below the opener, rest, take a rep above the opener, just very slightly above it, rest, then take your second attempt. Then take a rep below your second attempt, then above your second attempt, then rest, then take your third attempt. Now, this may not be exactly what happens in your meet, and it probably won't be, but I'm giving you probably the worst scenario to max out ever. I'm not going to allow you to have this perfect setup so that you can walk into the gym and have your music playing, you got your pre-workout, you sit down and you're like, I feel good right now to hit this number, whatever. Because we need you to be very consistent from, if you want a PR, I want you to be consistent from 97 to 100%. And I know that sounds wild. Like, this is the time. We're literally 1 week away. So this is what I do on week 7. I actually wrote this down as my AO prep. Then I ended up sending it to Max, and Max basically took what I have for the American Open prep for myself, and I've actually used this taper for other people. And he kind of like changed it up a little bit, which I'm totally down for because he's my coach, so that's what we do. But basically, that's what I set up, and I think that wave format is basically like, hey, listen, you don't just get this sport doesn't allow you just to like build up and have fun, and then I missed. Like, let me like rest as much as I want, maybe get some water, whatever. I get to go again whenever I want, and I get to pick my weight. It's all that just doesn't happen in this sport, and I don't want to be the guy that like goes up and like goes 2 for 6 because I wasn't ready. I want to basically be able to sleep on my opening snatch. I know that sounds crazy, but I literally, you put a blindfold on me and I'm going to hit it. And it's not because it's light. It's just because I've done it so many times. I'm a master at opening with this weight. And then I want to be able to go in the back room and be like confident that even if I do have 6 minutes off, 9 minutes off, you give me another rep in the back, I'm going to get jacked up. And then I'm going to walk out on stage and I'm going to get aroused again and I'm going to go and I'm going to hit this, whatever weight you give me, whatever weight you send my way. And this is why I love the Bulgarians. It's like, yeah, they were crazy about the way they train, but they just didn't care. They just did not care. Their world didn't have to be set up perfectly. All the chips didn't have to be set up or whatever. The dominoes didn't have to be set up so that they can knock it down perfectly. They just didn't care. And like there's not enough of that in competitive weightlifting, I don't think. At least at that level, like the series level. That's why you'll see a lot of red on the board. A lot of red at those meets.
Yeah. So I think one thing that I think that's great. I think the waves are a great way to prepare for that. And I think people need to get you alluded to it there, but people need to get away from the idea that training should be perfect, in the sense that when I come in, I'm going to have my bar and my platform and the jumps I want, and I'm going to train fresh, and I'm going to be able to lift really well, and I'm going to be able to PR. That's great, but meets are never that way. I mean, even at a local meet, it's not going to be like that. So if you can, never. I mean, if you can take, like, I'll have people work up, so you'll have 3 waves. Just for example, it's maybe like 73%, 76, 79, 76, 79, 82, 79, 82, 85.
Yeah, that's kind of the typical,
Yeah, like the typical Greg Everett wave program. So, and then you go for a heavy single on that 3rd wave, right? So you're maxing out after you just worked up to, like you said, maybe your opener and then your second. You come back down, you work up and go for your 3rd or PR. And if you can hit a big lift then, just imagine when all you have to do is work up to a heavy single. Like, you're gonna be deadly. And then with the crowd,
of course,
with the singlet on, with the lights, if you can harness that,
I'm telling you,
then you're going to be
Absolutely.
It's going to be deadly. So I mean, what's your take on that? Right, you're a competitive guy. You played sports. To people that are getting into weightlifting, they need to learn how to compete and use that competition to boost performance. Do you ever have a conversation with somebody like, hey, if you're trying to get something out of the meet, this is how you do it?
Yeah, I think it really stems from not trying to hedge your bets. And this is a condition of just being a human, trying to know before you know. Right? The competition is the ultimate unknown. It's the ultimate, what am I capable of? What can I do at that particular moment? I can be something that I never expected I could possibly be. Or I can try to foresee the future. I can try to hedge my bets, if you will. I can try to train as hard as possible and basically be like, assure myself of the way that I'm going to lift. And this is something that I touched on in one of my videos called Why You Should Compete. There's actually different phases and different terminology in the Soviet structure. And one of them is like detraining. The other one is it's basically increasing your capacity in other words, right? So that's basically, it says it's like increasing your ability to train. And then, obviously peaking. But to them, the peaking is just as much philosophical. It's just as much spiritual and arousal based as it is training, if not more, right? And that's what I try to get out of the guys that are texting me nonstop. They're like, I'm so worried about this. I'm like, dude, you're going to be fired up. You need to capitalize. You don't know what you're capable of. Stop trying to understand what you're capable of and just do the best that you can. And when I say do the best that you can, try to be a super version of yourself. You can't even explain it until if you hit a PR on the platform, you have done everything. You know what I mean? And to me, that is it's like so spiritual and arousal based and has little to nothing to do with training. Obviously you can't and that's in the moment, right? Like obviously your training matters, right? But that in that moment, the idea of harnessing something that you don't even know is there, like something just deep, something just crazy, and you pull on this bar and it feels light as it ever, like you never felt a bar this light, and it goes over your head in the snatch.
Well, and that's why
that's the type of stuff.
Well, that's why we talk about over pulling a first attempt. We never talk about under pulling, right? I don't think people can connect those two. It's like when we say, hey, when you go out there, be ready for it. You're going to over pull it. And it's not like, hey, you're going to go out, you're going to Clark it because you can't get the height on it. You're going to get more out of the meet. You're not going to be worse on the competition platform. So if you try to predict that you're going to be worse, you're just going to stress yourself out to no end. The week of the meet, you're not going to get better, but you can get worse if you talk yourself into it. Go out there, let whatever happens happen.
Yes, that's exactly my point about peaking. Is like I just try to have an attitude in training. I'm here just to get my training done. I'm waiting for that moment to get out and compete. The money is in the goddamn bank. I'm here so I won't get fined. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know that quote from God, I can't think of his name. The running back for the Seahawks.
Oh, Marshawn Lynch.
Why am I just so bad with names? I'm so bad with names today. Yeah, Marshawn Lynch. I'm here so I don't get fined. You know what I mean? That's what he says. It's like you got to go into your practices. Your and I love calling weightlifting practice too.
It's a sport.
Or training. Training and practice is the same. I mean, it's the same thing. If you call it working out,
you're a fucking loser.
You're misinformed. Yeah, you're misinformed. You don't know you don't know. I mean, it's just you don't have a goal. You don't have anything, and that's fine. That's fine. I mean, this is something that I actually do want to talk about. And because my YouTube channel has been doing pretty well, and the exposure that I get is to people now who are just kind of interested in weightlifting, but they're more interested in like kind of like me as a YouTuber.
Yeah.
And it's a very strange thing, right? Like, and I like it because I like having a personality. I like being a person. I like, I like making jokes. I like being ironic about things and just having fun. And I think that adds to the content. People are interested in me and my process. But what comes with the territory of that is certain things that just don't fall in line with weightlifting as sport. And I made a very good comparison to this in my podcast. I was like, I basically said like, I'm getting people who are interested in God knows what, like they just say like, I want to get bigger and stronger. Like they don't really know what that means or anything, but there are people on YouTube that are telling them that this is how it's done. Mm. And then those people are basically expecting, and they're fit. It's like the fitness culture, right? And me and Colin saw this at the Texas A&M rec center. There's a lot of people in there, they're doing bicep curls. They're in their tank tops. And then they go home and they consume fitness culture. And they don't really have a goal or anything in mind. It's just kind of like this random lifestyle. And something that they need to understand is like I like that they're interested in weightlifting. Like I love that. But my ideals are not in line with theirs. Not in the least. You know what I mean? I can't tell you how many comments I've gotten of people that are like, he's fat and out of shape, or he's gotten fat, he's gotten out of shape, he's this, and this. It's like one guy recently was like, Colin and me and Colin's my training partner, and me and another guy who used to train at our gym, we all jerked over 165 kilos. Colin or my buddy jerked 175. I jerked 181. Front squat. We all front squatted over 400 pounds, and then we all deadlifted over 227 kilos. I deadlifted 280 kilos. And the only thing this guy said was like, these people don't look like they train. What does that even? What does that even mean? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what? We don't look like we train. Cool. Like, what is that? That doesn't hold any water at all. And I basically, like, that's my issue is like, if you want to commit to something, it's hard because like you and I, we understand like numbers. We understand what's good and what's bad. We understand what's possible and what's not possible in this sport. But a lot of people just view it as like, oh, this is a thing that comes to me. And it's like, oh, they look weird. They do that weird. They do that weird. There's no real, like, anything set up. And so I'm just kind of, I know I'm ranting on it like I'm complaining, but it's more just something that I've noticed more and more lately. When I had like 1,000 subscribers, it was just a bunch of people who wanted like some cues for weightlifting. Now I have more and I love it. And I love having a personality, and I love being able to like interact with people and make jokes and shit like that. But it's interesting that I'm getting more of a grasp of like internet culture, if you will. And I guess that's kind of like a little bit of a side topic. But that's something that I've noticed lately. And, I don't know, I don't know if it's a good thing or if it's a bad thing, but either way, it's just interesting to see these things pop up,
Yeah, because like my podcast is still, I mean, it's growing obviously, but I feel like I'm still at a point where people want to listen to people talk about weightlifting in very specific ways. How do I peak? How do I taper? How do I program for myself? What should my technique look like? How do I correct these problems? Kind of as you mentioned before. And as I develop this, I want to get even more in depth. So Seb and I recorded a podcast about muscle growth and how it grows and how you train to grow your muscles. And I kind of see myself going in the opposite way because I hate general fitness folk. And, maybe that limits my exposure, but to me, it's all about, it's about putting out what you want to put out. And I get that. I get wanting to share your personality.
Well, so I don't cater to them. I don't cater to them, Josh. That's the thing is like if you look at my content, it's very straightforward. Like I'm trying to get people to be better at two things. Yeah. The snatch and the clean and jerk. But the thing is like I'm still attracting people who don't want to get better at the snatch and the clean and jerk. Yeah. And I guess I'm just observing this because I don't have any issue because I'm not changing who I am.
You're almost at like this crossroads. And where like there's that weird potential to like hit a boom if you do kind of go down that rabbit hole of like
but I would never do it. No, would never do it. You know, honest to God, Josh, at some point I want to like my goal is to literally be one of the greatest American weightlifting coaches of all time.
Agreed.
And if I don't hit that if I don't hit that goal, it doesn't matter because I'm doing what I love every day. You know what I mean? And so being a successful YouTuber to me does not equal being a successful coach. So I do it because I love it. If I don't love it, I'm not doing it. I do it because I have people reach out to me all the time, you know, saying that they enjoy it, that they love it. And I'm sure you do the podcast for the similar reasons. It helps when people are like, I love what you're doing, man. It's great. You know, if I said, I don't care what people think, I don't care that people like what I do, I just want to be the best coach I possibly can. Well, then that's probably not the best attitude to be the best coach that I possibly can. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I genuinely believe that like if you can provide a service for other people and it might not be in line with your goals, that's totally okay. As long as it doesn't necessarily get in the way of them. And something that would get in the way of my goals is being 100 or being like a 1 million subscriber YouTuber and like grinding to get content. I'm not going to grind to get content, bro. Are you kidding me? I want to put out a piece of content a week so people can get better at these two things. I don't want to put out a piece of content every day that's just shitty and garbage. There are people out there that do that, and that's great. It's fantastic. Go do that. That's your thing. But it's not in line with my goals. You know what I mean? So
yeah. No, I get that, man. And I think that it's tough because you do want to put yourself out there and you want to share more of your personality and more of what you're like in kind of day-to-day interactions. But it's always kind of worrisome because you don't think it's going to get that same draw as like, here's the drill you need to use to fix the pole or whatever. It's like, oh, here's just me kind of hanging out coaching. Here's a couple lifts.
Yeah.
And like, but that's what I want to see. Like, I want to watch Zach coach some people up. I want to watch Zach sling some weights. Like that one video you put up on your YouTube channel of you coaching that guy through like a warm up and then kind of teaching him the snatch. That was great. Like that was an excellent video. Like hat off.
Yeah.
I really liked it. So kind of going from there, you have the aspiration of being one of the greatest American coaches, and that's tough, right? Because as you said on Seb's podcast, it's something I can relate to. We just kind of don't have that competitive pedigree that other people have. It's almost like you're starting at a deficit, trying to build that reputation up. So, I mean, how do you get around that?
Yeah.
Like that's a
Well,
roadblock.
I know I got your answer right here, dude. I'll see you in 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it sounds funny, but like, I'll see you 10 years from now. You know, if someone wants to talk shit about your pedigree, fuck them. They don't know, you know, like, honest to God, fuck them. Yeah. I'll see you 10 years from now, bud. We'll see how it plays out. If I quit and I don't do what I said I'm going to do, then you're probably right. But if I'm here 10 years from now and I'm still doing the same thing, who knows? Who knows? No one knows. You some sort of fortune teller, you know, like that to me is what everyone's approach needs to be, especially in training. Especially in training. Jesus, dude, I think 3 years ago I hit a 120 snatch and I was like, this might be the greatest I'll ever get in this sport. You know, and I think it was a couple months ago, I hit 140 kilo snatch. Then I hit 141 off the blocks. It's the same thing as like, you know, I don't know how well I'm going to be able to do in coaching weightlifting remote, but you just do it because you love it so much. It doesn't matter. You know, one of the craziest things in my life that I like, that just changed my life forever was like, I was jobless, and this was after my internship with Texas A&M. I was jobless. No one was calling back. I was like, either they're gonna move home or anything. I wasn't very happy, or I wasn't happy with my job, right? But I was actually, and this was a point in time where I probably should have been the most depressed in my life. I should have been the lowest in my life, whatever. But I had my girlfriend, I had my family. I was just so, like, I was in love with my girlfriend, you know. I was like just in the best place mentally I could be, that I legitimately did not care. I didn't care that I didn't have a job. I didn't care that I was living off my parents' checks that they would have to send to me, or they'd have to deposit money and I'd have to call my mom. You know, it was like so embarrassing. I was 27 years old, 26 years old doing something like that. But I just didn't care because, like, I was in a good place with everything outside of my job. And that is the point at which I built my career. Someone said to me, like, you should make YouTube videos if you have things to say. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. Doesn't hurt. Hey, you should get a job as a personal trainer at a Gold's Gym. Going from working at a university like Texas A&M and just going to being a personal trainer, like, okay, I don't care. I'm going to make the money at Gold's Gym, and then I'm going to make these YouTube videos. I posted a YouTube video to Reddit. Some people were like, wow, this is really cool. Do it again. I did it again. Still working as a personal trainer for Gold's Gym. I did it again, and I did it again. And it's all because I was in a good place, and I just didn't care about anything. And then someone was like, hey, can you coach me? I was like, sure. So I started coaching them remotely. And then I started some kind of promoting it. It all just snowballed, but it all started with me just not really caring, you know. And I'm going to continue to not entirely care how good I get as a weightlifting. I'm not going to care about my pedigree. I'm just going to keep doing what I do. And then we'll see what happens 10 years from now. You know? Yeah, I mean, that's simply like that. That's my answer to that. But a lot of 100%. People, what they don't see is that when you say that, like, it comes off a certain way. But I can understand it because it comes from a place of, like, you're chasing this feeling, right? And if you help someone hit a PR, that's the feeling you're chasing, right? If someone's technique improves, that's the feeling you chase. If we continue to chase that feeling and just continue to get people better, it's going to happen. It's just going to happen. Like you said, right. Weightlifting is a wait your turn kind of sport. If you wait there at the bus stop long enough, the bus will show up and you'll have money in your pocket to get on. But the way you do that is people come in. It's like, hey, let's get better at the snatch, clean, and jerk. Someone else comes in. Suddenly you have a national level lifter. Suddenly you have 3. Suddenly you have 10, 15. Then you have a squad. Well, I love the fact that I have people to communicate with. I have, you know, thousands of people that, like, contact me via comments, emails, all this stuff. I have this discourse that just consistently keeps me entertained, consistently keeps my mind moving, and I consistently get better at my craft and better as a weightlifter. I'm always moving and having that conversation in my mind. I'm not just simply waiting. I'm not just simply waiting to get an international athlete that's going to kill it. I'm just doing what I love, and maybe it happens and maybe it doesn't, but I can guarantee you if I keep putting effort forward and keep doing what I love, you know, like I said, 10 years from now, no one knows. No one knows anything. Like, God, I don't even know what could happen 2 years from now, 1 year from now. And so like that and Josh, damn, I think you hit that right on the nose. Is like, people, the first thing they say is, well, who have you coached? What's your resume look like? But this is the thing. It's not just endemic of coaching. This is endemic of life, dude. The first thing if you want to get a job somewhere, what's the first thing you have to give them? A goddamn resume. I'm so smart. I'm so talented at this, whatever it is. Please let me get a job. They're like, well, let me see your resume. You're like, well, I don't have anything on my resume. Sorry. We're going to take someone who's probably, you actually probably are more talented than them, but we can't take you because it doesn't say this on this piece of paper. And that's something that I noticed a lot of in strength and conditioning. In strength and conditioning, 100%. And in weightlifting, who have you coached? That's number one. The number one thing is who have you coached? And my thing is like, if you just keep going long enough, you'll end up coaching someone or whatever. Yeah. You'll end up getting big enough, whatever. I think that Tom Soroka, he might be the first to tell you, like, I don't think he's coached a national champion or even a national medalist, but he's gotten near 100 people to the American Open, and he's networked. And next thing you know, he's speaking at the symposium for USAW. He hasn't, by a lot of people, coached anyone, by a lot of people's standards, coached anyone, but he's an amazing coach. He was able to get around it. And I feel like you and I, the fact that you have this podcast, Josh, it gives you, this mode of like, hey guys, I'm going through this process where I'm building my expertise. Come be coached by me. They'll say, hell yeah, I want to be fucking coached by Josh. You're an expert. I've witnessed you become an expert. And that's exactly what's happening in my YouTube channel. It's like I'm building myself up as an expert. And people are witnessing it. And people are saying, you know what? I think he's an expert. Why? Because of this, this, and this. Not because of who he's coached. Not because of some obscure thing that I can't see. But I have visual proof. I have actual representation of what he knows and what he doesn't. And I believe that he can be a coach for me.
Yeah, I want to thank you for that. And I want to say that it's something I talk about all the time is like, if you put yourself in a position where there's pressure on you, you will get better. And by starting this podcast, by starting your YouTube channel, by opening yourself up to other people for online coaching, whatever it is, it's like once you take someone on, you have to be better or you're going to die off. You have to produce better content or you're going to die off, right? And if you keep putting these opportunities in front of yourself that force you to adapt, just like a training stimulus, right? We train more to get better. We work more to get smarter. We coach more athletes to become a better coach. If you put these opportunities in front of yourself, you have to adapt, or you die trying, right? And that's a position you're in right now because so many people rely on you for information. Where it's like, if you don't get better, people are gonna be like, "What the fuck happened to Zack?" And I'm not saying like everyone needs to do that, but I think it does help you evolve more quickly than just saying like, "Oh, I'll get to it when I want to." It's like, I need to get to it right now because this, of course, my livelihood relies on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I don't know what we were going to talk about. Like, it's kind of funny.
I think we're on an hour 40 right now.
Yeah.
Hour something.
It was a great chat. I mean, we did touch a lot of topics, a lot of really useful information for the people listening about programming and peaking and coaching and being an athlete and just kind of like the struggles we all go through, right? I'm sure other people go through this in their jobs, and we just happen to choose weightlifting as our job. And I'm not saying we're better for it, but I love weightlifting. I want my life to be about weightlifting, and if we can continue to do that, we'll probably both be happy people. So, Zack, you mentioned your YouTube channel, you mentioned your podcast, you mentioned your Instagram. Where can people find those if they want to check them out, especially your podcast since it's like relatively new?
Yeah, so if you go to if you have Apple podcasts, which I think most people do, you can just search my name, Zack Telander. And the first thing that'll show up will actually be Seb's podcast with me. But the right next to that will be the Training Make podcast. You can also find me on the Training Make podcast YouTube channel if you're on YouTube and you want to listen or whatever. I think that you could find us on a bunch of different other places. But yeah, that's the podcast. The YouTube channel, again, search Zack Telander in the search bar, should be the first thing that comes up. And then my Instagram, coach_ZT. What else? Oh, my programming. If something that I do, and been told by a lot of people that I'm not making enough money on it, but I just don't care. I've been putting all of my programming on my Patreon. And all you have to do is pay $1 a month, so that's $12 in a year. And it supports me. It helps me, live my life. Like, I'm not investing in things that are going to help my channel, but it basically helps me pay for the bills, and then I can focus on making better content for the people out there. So it's been amazing to have that Patreon. So all you need to do is put $1 in, and you get, right now I think I have like 24 weeks of programming, just like basically all my stuff I just throw up there. So just Patreon, and then again search Zack Telander. So that's it. That's all I got to plug, man.
Well, for people listening, I think, don't get it misconstrued. Like, you don't have to run that program. As someone that wants to be better at writing programs, I like to look at other programs. So if you feel like, hey, I want to shore up kind of my ability to write a program, go check out Zack's. I'm sure you'll learn plenty about what he does, how you can use it, how you can incorporate it, what not to do maybe. I don't know, but you're only going to benefit from looking at more programming, looking at more lifting. I guess kind of the whole theme of this podcast is just do more. And that
just do more, babe.
Just do more. The ZT special. So go check out Zack's podcast. Go check out Zack's YouTube channel. I'll link everything in the description box below for ease of use. Zack, I do want to ask you something kind of as we're wrapping up. Like, those seminars, man, that's kind of surreal, right? I always hear like John North seminar, Glenn. Like, and now it's like Zack Telander seminar. That's got to be pretty weird to like walk into a gym full of people that want to learn from you.
It's exactly what you said before. It's that pressure situation. I walked into my first seminar about a year ago, and I was like, all right, let's do it. I made my bed. I'm going to lay in it now. And, it's like, I wasn't entirely sure if I was able to, and I just did it. And then I've kept doing it. I've done it. I've probably done about 8 seminars since then, and they've been a blast. Another thing I'm going to plug, Clarence Kennedy and I are putting on a training camp basically here in Texas. And so if you're interested, it's going to be the second weekend in January. People listening, obviously. It's going to be second weekend of January, and it's going to be intense. It's going to be awesome.
That's going to be crazy. That's going to be fucking nuts, dude, because it's going to be right after the American Open. You're going to be like deep off season. Clarence Kennedy is going to be out. So guys, if you're at all interested in weightlifting, go check that out. So Zack, when are you going to have like links up, tickets, all that stuff available?
I will. I'll give you the links. You can just put them in the bottom, because I've got tickets out right now, and we haven't been promoting it because we're so far away from it. But those tickets are going to sell out for sure.
Yeah. And so cool. I'll put all that down below. I'm actually going to release this podcast tonight. So I need one for Tuesday. So I think this is a great opportunity. And kind of as we finish up, do you have any last words for the people at home listening?
Just commit to something, whatever it is, commit to it, and don't expect anything of it. Just commit and not care.
Well, I guess that's kind of our sign to wrap up. So everyone listening, thanks again, guys. Be sure to like, share, subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, go check out Zack's stuff, and I guess we'll catch you guys on the next episode. Peace.